The Great Hall of the Galactic Forum had never been so quiet. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in their seats waiting. Their eyes were fixed on the human ambassador who walked slowly to the center stage. Ambassador Marcus Kane looked calm, but everyone could feel that something big was about to happen. The Galactic Forum was the most important place in the galaxy. Here, representatives from over 1,000 different worlds came together to make decisions. They talked about trade, solved problems between planets, and worked together to keep peace. For 300 years, humans had been one of the most active members of this great assembly. Marcus reached the speaking platform and looked around the enormous room. Beings of all shapes and sizes stared back at him. There were the tall blue-skinned Altarians with their crystal-like features. The small but clever Valorians sat in their special floating chairs. The proud Rigel people wore their traditional golden robes. All of them waited to hear what the human had to say. "Friends and fellow beings of the galaxy," Marcus began. His voice carried clearly across the huge space without any machines to make it louder. This was something that always made other species feel uncomfortable about humans. "For 3 centuries, my people have been proud members of this forum. We have shared our knowledge freely. We have given our resources when others needed help. We have sent our ships to protect those who could not protect themselves." Counselor Vera of the Altarian Collective moved nervously in her seat. She remembered how human ships had saved her homeworld from space pirates just 2 years ago. The humans had asked for nothing in return except friendship. "We humans have always believed in working together," Marcus continued. "When the Scourge attacked the outer worlds, human fleets were the first to respond. When disease spread through the Tau systems, human doctors found the cure. When trade wars threatened to tear apart entire sectors, human diplomats brought peace." Many beings in the audience nodded. It was true. The humans had been involved in solving almost every major crisis in recent memory. Their technology was advanced, their military was strong, and their diplomats were skilled at finding solutions that worked for everyone. "However," Marcus said, and his tone changed. The word hung in the air like a dark cloud. "After much thought and discussion, the people of Earth and all human colonies have made a decision." The hall became even quieter, if that was possible. Some beings leaned forward in their seats. "Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Forum. We are ending all treaties, all trade agreements, and all military partnerships. We are closing our borders to all non-human ships and visitors." The reaction was instant. Shouts erupted from across the hall. Some beings jumped to their feet. Others made sounds of distress in languages that the translation devices struggled to convert. Prime Minister Kale of the Rigel Commonwealth stood up quickly, his golden robes flowing around him. "Ambassador Kane, surely this is some kind of mistake. What do you want from us? More votes in the council? Better trade deals? Just tell us what will make you change your mind." Marcus looked at the Prime Minister with what humans called a smile. To other species, this expression had always seemed strange and sometimes frightening. "We want nothing from you, Prime Minister. We simply choose to be alone." "But the Scourge," Speaker Nala of the Tau Confederation called out. Her voice was high with panic. "The attacks at the edge of the galaxy are getting worse." "Your fleets are the only thing stopping them from reaching our worlds." "Not anymore," Marcus replied calmly. "You have 48 standard hours to remove all non-human people from human space. Any ships, stations, or colonies that belong to other species must be evacuated. After that time, our borders will be permanently closed." The chaos in the hall grew louder. Beings were talking rapidly to each other in dozens of different languages. Some were angry, others were scared, and many seemed completely confused. "You cannot be serious," shouted Ambassador Rex of the Valorian Trade Guild. "Half of our shipping routes go through human space. Our economies will collapse." "The medical research stations," added Dr. Mira from the Centauri Alliance. "Human scientists are working on cures for diseases that affect dozens of species. People will die without that research." Marcus remained calm in the face of all the anger and fear. "You will have to find other solutions. Humanity has made its choice, but why?" Speaker Nala asked, her voice breaking. "What have we done wrong? How have we failed you?" For a moment, Marcus's expression seemed to soften. "Perhaps that is something you should think about during the coming months." As Marcus turned to leave, he placed a small device on the speaking platform. The device began to glow with a soft blue light. "What is that?" demanded Prime Minister Kale. "A quantum broadcaster," Marcus explained. "It will send our announcement to every corner of the galaxy." Every world, every ship, every station will know that humanity has chosen isolation. Wait, called out Counselor Vera. Please, we can talk about this. There must be some way to work things out. But Marcus was already walking away. His footsteps echoed through the now silent hall as thousands of beings watched him leave. The small device continued to glow on the platform, sending its message across space at faster than light speeds. Within hours, the news would reach every inhabited world in the galaxy. Humanity, the species that had been the galaxy's protector, peacekeeper and problem solver for 3 centuries, was abandoning everyone. As the great doors closed behind Marcus, the hall erupted in chaos once again. Some beings were shouting at each other, blaming different species for driving the humans away. Others were making urgent calls to their home worlds, trying to figure out what this would mean for their people. Speaker Nala sat down heavily in her chair. She had worked with human diplomats for 20 years. They had always been reliable, always willing to help, always fair in their dealings. This sudden change made no sense to her. What do we do now? Asked her aide, a young Tau named Oren. Nala looked around the chaotic hall. Without human peacekeepers, how long would it be before old conflicts started again? Without human technology, how many people would suffer from diseases that could have been cured? Without human trade ships, how many worlds would face shortages of food and supplies? I do not know, she admitted. I truly do not know. In the days that followed, the galaxy watched in shock as human ships began leaving every non-human world. Research stations were abandoned. Trade routes were closed. Military bases were emptied. It was as if an entire civilization was simply disappearing from galactic society. Some leaders tried to send messages to Earth, begging the humans to reconsider. But there was no response. The human home world had gone completely silent. Others tried to send ships to human space, hoping to negotiate face-to-face. But those ships were turned away at the border by polite but firm human patrol vessels. The galaxy was about to learn what life was like without humanity's protection and help. And for many beings, that was a terrifying thought. As the news spread to the furthest reaches of space, something else stirred in the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge. The scourge had been held back by human fleets for decades. Now, for the first time in centuries, the path to the galaxy's heart lay open and undefended. The galaxy watched in dread. Humanity abandoned the Forum. 6 months had passed since humanity closed its borders. The galaxy was already falling apart. Admiral Sarah stood on the bridge of the human warship Defiance, watching through the viewport as the last human colony ship jumped into hyperspace. They were leaving another frontier world behind, bringing everyone back to the core human systems. Admiral, said Communications Officer Blake, we are getting distress calls from Kepler Station again. The Valorian Trade Guild is demanding protection money from the merchants there. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. The Valorians had been peaceful traders for hundreds of years. They had made their living by moving goods between different worlds, always fair and honest in their dealings. But now, without human peacekeepers to maintain order, they were acting like criminals. Not our problem anymore, Sarah said, though the words felt wrong coming out of her mouth. On the former human world of New Geneva, chaos ruled the streets. The planet had been a major center for galactic trade, with huge space stations orbiting above the world. But when the humans evacuated, they left a dangerous empty space that others rushed to fill. 3 different alien groups were now fighting for control of the orbital stations. The Rigel Commonwealth wanted the stations for their own trade network. The Altarian Collective claimed they needed them for security reasons. The Centauri Alliance said the stations belonged to them because they had the most trade agreements with the previous human government. Ships from all 3 groups patrolled the space around New Geneva, and small battles broke out almost daily. The people living on the planet below lived in fear, never knowing when the fighting might spread to the surface. High Chancellor Drix of the Centauri Alliance sat in his office, watching news reports from across the galaxy. Everything was getting worse. On his desk were reports of trade routes collapsing, medical research stopping, and old conflicts starting up again. Sir, said his assistant, Deputy Mira, the situation is getting critical. Without human technology, our agricultural worlds cannot produce enough. The galaxy watched in dread. Humanity abandoned the Forum food. Without human doctors, the plague on Centauri Prime is spreading faster than we can treat it. Drix rubbed his forehead. He was getting headaches every day now from the stress. How did we not see how much we depended on them? They were involved in everything, it was true. Humans had not just been helpful members of the galactic community. They had been the foundation that everything else was built on. Their ships had kept trade routes safe from pirates. Their doctors had developed cures for diseases that affected dozens of different species. Their engineers had designed the systems that kept space stations running. Their diplomats had prevented wars before they could start. Now all of that was gone, and the galaxy was learning how helpless it had become. On Earth, President Elena stood in the White House, giving a speech that was broadcast to all human colonies. "My fellow humans," she said, "the galaxy believed it could function without us. They took our help for granted. They assumed we would always be there to solve their problems and fight their battles. Let them try to manage on their own." But not all humans agreed with the decision to abandon the galaxy. Dr. James, who had been the director of the Galactic Medical Exchange, met with other human scientists who felt the same way. "We are condemning billions of innocent people to suffer and die," he said to the group. "Yes, the galactic governments took us for granted. Yes, they should have been more grateful. But does that mean we should let children die from diseases we could cure?" Dr. Rebecca, a former human ambassador, shook her head. "James, we tried for 300 years to help them build something better. We gave them our technology, our protection, our knowledge. And what did they do? They became lazy and dependent. They stopped trying to solve their own problems because they knew we would do it for them. But now they are learning," added Dr. Martinez, who had studied galactic politics for decades. "Look at the reports. For the first time in centuries, different species are actually working together, without us forcing them to do it. The Tau and Valorians have formed a defense pact. The Altarians are sharing their crystal technology with smaller worlds. They are growing up, but only because we forced them to." James was not convinced. At what cost? How many will die before they figure it out? President Elena had been listening to the debate. "That is a price they have to pay," she said firmly. "We cannot be the galaxy's babysitters forever. If they cannot learn to take care of themselves, then they do not deserve to survive." Meanwhile, in deep space, something ancient and terrible was moving. The Scourge had been testing the galaxy's defenses for decades, but human fleets had always been there to stop them. The Scourge ships were unlike anything else in the galaxy, black metal vessels that seemed to absorb light, filled with creatures that no one understood. For years, they had launched small attacks at the edge of the galaxy, always retreating when human warships arrived. But the humans were gone now, and the Scourge was beginning to move in larger numbers. Captain Ryan Mitchell commanded one of humanity's most advanced stealth ships, the Shadow. His mission was to watch what was happening in the galaxy, but never to interfere. He sat in the captain's chair, reading reports from his intelligence officers. "Sir," said Lieutenant Park, "the Scourge has taken 3 more systems in the past week. The local defense forces are not even slowing them down." Ryan looked at the tactical display showing Scourge movements. Red dots were spreading across the map like a disease. "Any response from the galactic governments?" "The Forum is asking for help, but no one wants to send their ships that far from home. They are all too worried about protecting their own worlds." Ryan felt anger building inside him. This was exactly what humanity had warned about for decades. The other species were selfish and short-sighted. They would not work together even when facing extinction. "Sir," Park continued, "we are also getting reports of refugee ships heading toward our borders, millions of civilians trying to escape the fighting." Ryan stared at the display showing the approaching refugee ships. Everything in him wanted to open the borders and let them in. Humanity had always protected innocent people, regardless of what species they were, but his orders were clear. Maintain the perimeter, let nothing through. Force the galaxy to solve its own problems, maintain position, he ordered. Let them pass to other sectors. Sir, some of those ships have children on board. Ryan closed his eyes for a moment. I know, Lieutenant. But if we save them now, their governments will never learn to save themselves. As the months continued to pass, the situation in the galaxy grew worse. Old enemies that had been kept apart by human diplomacy were going to war. Trade systems that had depended on human protection were collapsing. Medical research that could save lives was being abandoned because the human scientists who led it were gone. But something else was beginning to happen. Faced with real danger for the first time in centuries, some species were starting to work together in ways they never had before. The crisis was forcing them to be stronger, smarter, and more cooperative. The question was whether they would learn fast enough to survive what was coming. The galaxy watched in dread. Humanity abandoned the Forum. 2 years had passed since humanity disappeared behind their closed borders. The galaxy that remained was nothing like the peaceful civilization it had once been. Commander Lisa Torres sat in the captain's chair of the stealth ship Shadow, reading intelligence reports that made her feel sick. Her job was simple but hard to bear. Watch everything that happened in the galaxy but never help no matter how bad things got. The data screens around her showed a galaxy in chaos. The Valorian Trade Guild had become a criminal organization that demanded payment from any ship wanting to use their trade routes. The Altarian Collective was destroying entire planets to mine their resources, not caring about the people who lived there. Worst of all, the Rigel Commonwealth was building weapons that had been banned for good reasons. "Commander," said Lieutenant Park, her tactical officer, "the Rigel forces just used neural disruptors on the civilian population of Proxima 4. The weapons attack the brain directly. People are dying in terrible pain." Lisa felt her hands clench into fists. Neural disruptors were considered war crimes by every civilized society. They caused unimaginable suffering before death. How many casualties? Estimated 12 million so far. Men, women, children. The Rigel forces are trying to force the planet to surrender by making the population suffer. And we just watch. Lisa said bitterly. Those are our orders. Commander. Lisa stared at the tactical display showing the attack on Proxima 4. Every human instinct told her to move her ship into position and stop the slaughter. The Shadow had enough firepower to destroy the Rigel fleet, and the stealth systems meant they would never see it coming. But her orders were absolute. Observe, record, but never interfere. On what had once been the galactic capital of Nexus Prime, Speaker Nala was struggling to hold together what remained of the Tau Confederation. Every day brought news of more member worlds declaring independence and leaving the Alliance. "Speaker," said General Oren, her security chief, 3 more systems have pulled out of the Confederation this week. They say they cannot trust us to protect them anymore. Nala looked older than her years. The stress of trying to manage a collapsing government had aged her rapidly. Can we blame them? Without human peacekeepers, we cannot even protect our own capital world. There has to be something we can do, Oren insisted. Maybe we could send an envoy to Earth. Try to negotiate with the humans. Nala shook her head sadly. I have tried, Oren. 3 times I have sent our best diplomats to the edge of human space. They will not even respond to our messages. It is as if humanity has decided we no longer exist. What Speaker Nala did not know was that humanity was watching everything. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth, Director Alex Morgan sat in a secure command center that monitored the entire galaxy. Hundreds of human agents were hidden throughout alien governments, reporting back on every major decision. The Scourge has taken the Epsilon sector, reported Agent Rebecca Cross. 14 billion people are dead or missing. The local defense fleets were completely destroyed. Morgan studied the tactical displays without showing any emotion. What is the Forum's response? They are begging for humanitarian aid from anyone who will listen, but they still refuse to admit that their policies were wrong. Speaker Nala gave a speech yesterday blaming humanity for abandoning them. She said we have a moral duty to help. So they have learned nothing, Morgan said coldly. In another part of the facility, Dr. Amanda Foster was analyzing psychological profiles of alien leaders. Director, the stress is beginning to show. Several government officials have suffered mental breakdowns. Suicide rates among political leaders are climbing. Good, Morgan replied. Stress forces growth. Comfort breeds weakness. Dr. Foster looked uncomfortable. Sir, with respect, we are watching entire civilizations collapse. Billions of innocent people are dying. Morgan turned to face her. Doctor, how many species has humanity saved over the past 3 centuries? How many wars have we prevented? How many disasters have we solved for them? Hundreds, sir. And what did they learn from our help? Dr. Foster was quiet for a moment. Nothing, see. They learned to depend on us instead of becoming stronger themselves. Exactly. We created a galaxy of children who never had to grow up. Now they are learning to be adults, and it is painful, but it is necessary. Far from Earth, Captain Ryan Mitchell commanded the most advanced ship in the human fleet, the Prometheus. His orders were to maintain the border around human space and let nothing pass through, even refugee ships full of innocent civilians. "Captain," said Commander Davis, his first officer, "long-range sensors are detecting a massive refugee convoy heading for our border. Estimated 5 million civilians fleeing the Scourge attacks." Ryan looked at the tactical display showing the approaching ships. Most of them were damaged and moving slowly. Many were civilian transports never designed for long space voyages. He could see life support readings that showed ships dangerously overcrowded with frightened families. "Any escort ships?" he asked. "Negative, sir. They are completely defenseless." Behind the refugees, the sensors showed something else. Scourge ships following at a distance like predators stalking wounded prey. The refugees would never outrun them. "Captain," Davis said quietly, "if we just let them pass into the neutral zone, the Scourge will catch them within hours. Those 5 million people will die." Ryan had been a soldier for 20 years. He had joined the military to protect innocent people. Every instinct he had screamed at him to move the Prometheus between the refugees and their pursuers. His ship could destroy the entire Scourge force without breaking a sweat. But his orders were clear. Maintain the perimeter. Let the galaxy solve its own problems. Force them to learn that actions have consequences. "Maintain position, Commander," he ordered. "We do not interfere." Davis looked shocked. "Sir, we are talking about 5 million innocent people, including children." "I know exactly what we are talking about," Ryan said, his voice hard. "But if we save them today, their governments will never learn to save themselves tomorrow. How many more will die in the long run if we keep solving their problems for them?" As the refugee ships passed by the human border, desperate radio messages flooded the communication channels. Mothers begging for their children to be taken to safety. Fathers offering everything they owned for passage to human space. Old people asking only that the young ones be saved. The human ships remained silent and motionless, watching as the refugees continued toward uncertain safety while death followed behind them. But something was beginning to change in the galaxy. The constant crises were forcing different species to work together in ways they never had before. Old enemies were forming alliances to survive. Rival governments were sharing resources and technology. The weak were being forced to become strong, and the selfish were learning the value of cooperation. The question remained, would they learn fast enough, or would the galaxy tear itself apart before they could build something better? Breakier, the galaxy watched in dread. Humanity abandoned the Forum. 3 years had passed since humanity vanished behind their closed borders. In the abandoned human research facility on Kepler Station, a discovery was about to change everything. Dr. Keith, a brilliant scientist from the Altarian Collective, worked frantically at a human computer terminal. He had been trying for months to access the research databases that the humans had left behind when they evacuated. Most of the files were encrypted, but he had finally found a way to break through the security systems. "This cannot be right," he whispered to his research partner, Dr. Maria. She was one of the few humans who had stayed behind when the borders closed. Married to an Altarian and unable to return to human space. Maria looked over his shoulder at the data scrolling across the screen. What she saw made her blood run cold. "Keith, where did you find this?" "In the classified military research files. According to this data, humanity has known about the true nature of the Scourge for over 50 years. The information on the screen was shocking. The Scourge was not a natural phenomenon like everyone believed. It was not some unknown alien species that had evolved in the darkness between galaxies. According to the human files, the Scourge was artificial, created by an ancient species called the Harbingers. "Look at this," Keith said, pointing to another section of the data. "The Harbingers built the Scourge as a test. They programmed it to attack galaxies and see how the different species respond." Maria felt sick as she read further. "It is like a final examination for entire civilizations. Species that can work together and stand united against impossible odds get to evolve to the next level of existence. Those that fall apart and fight among themselves get destroyed," Keith finished. "The data shows dozens of galaxies that failed the test. Billions of species that could not learn to cooperate in time. The files contain detailed analysis of previous Scourge attacks throughout the universe. The pattern was always the same. The Scourge would appear at the edge of a galaxy and begin small attacks. At first, the civilized species would try to fight it with their individual military forces. When that failed, some would begin to work together, but only temporarily. The key was permanent cooperation. Only galaxies where different species truly united, Sharing all their knowledge and resources could defeat the Scourge. But that kind of cooperation was rare. Most civilizations were too proud, too suspicious, or too set in their ways to really trust each other. The humans knew this would happen to us, Maria said, reading through more files. They have been preparing for decades. Keith found another section of data that made him gasp. Maria, look at this. Humanity did not just know about the test. They planned their entire strategy around it. The files showed that human leaders had been debating what to do about the coming Scourge test for 50 years. Some had wanted to tell the other species and help them prepare. Others had argued that simply warning everyone would not be enough. They realized that as long as humanity was there to solve problems, the other species would never learn to work together, Maria said, reading the psychological analysis reports. We were like parents who never let their children face any real challenges. The children never grow up. The human strategy had been brilliant and ruthless. By withdrawing completely, they forced the galaxy to face the Scourge test without any safety net. Either the other species would learn to truly cooperate, or they would fail and be destroyed. There was no middle ground. On Earth, President Elena sat in the Oval Office with her top advisors, reviewing the latest intelligence reports from across the galaxy. The Unity Pact has been signed, reported General Patricia Stone, head of Human Military Command. 7 major powers have agreed to full cooperation. They are sharing technology, combining their fleets and coordinating all defensive operations. Casualties? Elena asked, still climbing, but the rate is slowing down. The Tau Valorian Joint Fleet actually managed to hold the line at the Battle of Proxima. It was the first time any non-human force has successfully stopped a major Scourge attack. Dr. Amanda Foster, the President's science advisor, looked troubled. Madam President, the psychological cost of our strategy has been enormous. Billions have died. Entire worlds have been destroyed. And we are being seen as the greatest villains in galactic history. Elena nodded grimly. I understand the cost, Amanda. But how many species would have died if we had kept them dependent on us forever? The Harbinger's test was coming whether we helped or not. At least this way, some of them have a chance to survive. The reports showed that the crisis was indeed forcing unprecedented cooperation. The proud Rigel Commonwealth was sharing their military technology with former enemies. The secretive Altarians were teaching their crystal-growing techniques to anyone who asked. The Valorians had abandoned their profitable trade routes to transport refugees and supplies wherever they were needed. It was the kind of selfless cooperation that had never existed in the galaxy before. The different species were finally learning to see each other as family rather than competitors. What about Phase 2? General Stone asked. Elena looked at the star charts showing human fleet positions. For 3 years, human ships had remained hidden, watching but never interfering. But intelligence reports showed that the galaxy was finally ready for the next step. Begin reconnaissance for selective intervention, Elena ordered. But remember, we return only to a galaxy that has proven it can stand on its own. Meanwhile, aboard the human warship Prometheus, Captain Ryan Mitchell received new orders that made him smile for the first time in years. Captain, his communications officer reported, we have authorization from Earth Command to begin Phase 2 operations. Ryan looked at his bridge crew. They had all watched in silence as the galaxy suffered and grew stronger. They had followed orders that went against every human instinct to help those in need, but now they could see that the sacrifice had been worth it. Helm, Ryan ordered, set course for the Epsilon sector. It is time to see if our former allies are ready to be our partners. In the depths of space, the Scourge continued its relentless assault on the galaxy, but something had changed. For the first time since the test began, the galaxy was fighting back with real unity. The weak alliances of convenience had become bonds of genuine trust and cooperation. The test was not over yet, but the galaxy was finally learning the lesson that humanity had been trying to teach. IROC for 300 years. Survival required not just strength, but the wisdom to work together as one people, regardless of what species they were born as. The humans were about to return, but they would return to a very different galaxy than the one they had left behind. The galaxy watched in dread. Humanity abandoned the Forum. 5 years had passed since humanity closed their borders and disappeared from galactic society. The galaxy that remained was completely transformed. Admiral Kale stood on the bridge of the Unity flagship, watching the final battle against the Scourge forces at the edge of the galaxy. He had once been Prime Minister of the Rigel Commonwealth, but those old titles meant nothing now. The Unity fleet he commanded included ships from dozens of different species, all working together with an efficiency that would have been impossible just a few years ago. "Admiral," reported Commander Tala, a Valorian who served as his tactical officer, "Scourge forces are retreating beyond the galactic rim. Our combined fleets have successfully pushed them back." Kale nodded with satisfaction. The victory had been hard won, costing millions of lives and countless ships, but it had been achieved through genuine cooperation, not because some outside force had saved them. Unity Station orbited above the former capital world of Nexus Prime. The station had been built from the wreckage of the old Galactic Forum, but it represented something completely different. Where the Forum had been a place for endless debates and political games, Unity Station was a center for real action and cooperation. "Admiral," said Communications Chief Tara, barely able to contain her excitement, "we are receiving a transmission from Earth." The command center fell silent. It had been 5 years since anyone had heard from humanity. Some had wondered if the humans were even still alive, or if they had somehow destroyed themselves in their isolation. The main display screen flickered to life, showing the face of President Elena. She looked older and more tired than when she had last been seen, but her eyes held a quiet satisfaction. "Congratulations," she said simply. "You have passed the test." Admiral Kale stepped forward, wearing the uniform of the Unity fleet rather than the golden robes of his former position. "President Elena, on behalf of the Unity Council, I formally request that humanity rejoin galactic civilization." Elena smiled, but shook her head. "Not rejoin, Admiral. We request permission to join for the first time as equals." The great doors of Unity Station's main assembly hall opened, and gasps echoed through the chamber. Ambassador Marcus Kane walked in, the same man who had announced humanity's withdrawal 5 years earlier. Behind him came a delegation of human representatives. But these humans looked different somehow. They carried themselves not with the confident authority of protectors, but with the respectful bearing of partners seeking acceptance. "We formally withdraw our application for membership in the old Galactic Forum," Marcus announced to the assembled representatives. "That organization no longer exists, and we were never truly equal members of it anyway. Instead, we humbly apply for membership in the Unity Council as partners, not protectors." Speaker Nala, now bearing the scars of 5 years of war but standing taller and stronger than ever before, stepped forward. "The Unity Council unanimously accepts humanity's application for membership." The celebration that followed lasted for hours. Species that had been enemies for centuries embraced as friends. The suffering of the past 5 years was not forgotten, but it was forgiven, because everyone now understood why it had been necessary. Later, as the formal ceremonies concluded, Dr. Amanda Foster approached Admiral Kale privately. "Admiral, there is something you should know about the Scourge and the test you just passed." Kyle looked at her calmly. "That it was artificial? That it was designed to test whether civilizations could learn to work together? We figured that out about 3 years ago." Amanda looked surprised. "How did you know?" "When species that had been fighting each other for thousands of years suddenly started working together perfectly," Kyle explained. "That kind of unity does not happen naturally. It has to be forged in fire." He paused and studied her face carefully. "The real question is whether humanity was part of the test, or the ones giving it." Amanda smiled but said nothing. "It does not matter anymore," Cal continued. "What matters is that we all learned the lesson. We are stronger together than we ever were apart." In the months that followed, humanity's fleets emerged from their hidden positions throughout the galaxy. Their ships were more advanced than ever, their technology improved by 5 years of intensive research and development. But they came not as saviors returning to rescue helpless children, but as partners joining an already strong alliance. The humans brought their knowledge and resources to the Unity Council, but they also learned from the other species. The Altarians had developed new crystal technologies during the crisis. The Valorians had created more efficient trade networks. The Tau had discovered new forms of communication, that worked across vast distances. Everyone had grown during the 5 years of separation. Dr. Maria, the human scientist who had discovered the truth about the scourge, was appointed to head the new Galactic Research Council. Her first project was to study the ancient Harbinger ruins that had been discovered during the war. The Harbingers left messages, she reported to the Unity Council. They went through this same test millions of years ago. They learned to work together as one species and evolved beyond physical existence. The scourge was their gift to help other civilizations learn the same lesson. President Elena, now in her final months in office, stood in her garden on Earth, looking up at the stars. The galaxy her successor would inherit was completely different from the one humanity had left 5 years ago. It was a galaxy where different species saw each other as family rather than competitors, where resources were shared freely and knowledge belonged to everyone, where conflicts were resolved through cooperation rather than force. Most importantly, it was a galaxy that could stand on its own, that did not need humanity to solve every problem or fight every battle. Was it worth it? Asked her aide James, who had opposed the withdrawal from the beginning. Elena thought about the billions who had died during the 5-year crisis. She thought about the hatred many species had felt toward humanity for abandoning them. She thought about the human soldiers who had been forced to watch suffering without being able to help. "Ask me in 100 years," she said finally, "when we see what kind of civilization they build with what they have learned." In the deepest reaches of space beyond the edge of the galaxy, something ancient stirred once more. The Harbingers had left other tests, other challenges that would come when civilizations were ready for them. The galaxy had passed its first great exam, but its education was far from over. But for now, for the first time in millions of years, different species across an entire galaxy truly saw each other as one people. The test was complete, and a new chapter in galactic history was about to begin. Humanity had given up its role as the galaxy's protector to become something far more valuable, the galaxy's partner. And in the process, they had helped create something that none of them could have built alone, a civilization based on genuine unity rather than dependence. The galaxy was finally ready to face whatever challenges the universe might offer, together.